I've always known silence had power. What I didn't realize, until that message, was how loud it could be. The text lit up my screen while I was stirring soup. I hadn't even heard the phone buzz. It was just there waiting, as if it had been written hours ago and had only now decided to reveal itself. Hey, Mom. Just a heads up. Vanessa thought it'd be best to keep the Europe trip to just us and the kids this time. Hope you understand. My hand froze over the pot. The wooden spoon tilted, clattering softly against the rim. No, we'd love to take you next time. No, it's not personal. Not even a damn emoji. Just, Vanessa thought it'd be best. Like I was an afterthought. A guest overstaying in a life I helped build. I stared at the words. The screen didn't change. There was no follow-up, no attempt to soften the blow. And then, like some pathetic reflex, I typed back one word, okay, that was it. I didn't ask why. I didn't demand an explanation. But inside, a scream began to take shape. And for the first time in years, I didn't shove it down. Because this wasn't about a vacation. This was about erasure. I sat down at the kitchen table. My house was quiet except for the low simmering sound of the soup pot. This wasn't just my kitchen. This had been their kitchen. I had handpicked every tile, every drawer knob, thinking of Ryan and Vanessa and their growing family. When Vanessa was pregnant with their first daughter, I told them I'd help with a down payment. They had just gotten married, fresh off a stressful apartment lease, and Vanessa was already talking about forever homes. I told myself it was the right thing to do. A legacy, my way of giving them a true beginning. But the money never stopped there. I offered to pay off the remainder of the mortgage. Ryan was under so much pressure at work. Vanessa's law firm wasn't stable yet. The baby needed a nursery, so I gave, and gave, until one day the deed didn't have my name anymore, and neither, it seemed, did the guest list. The soup boiled over. I didn't notice until the sizzling hit the stovetop. I turned it off, set the spoon down, and just stood there. I wasn't crying. Not yet. But I felt hollow. Like the rooms around me had shifted somehow, as if the walls knew the truth before I did. This wasn't a one-time cruelty. This was the culmination. The missed birthday calls. The polite distance. The holidays where I got the late invitation, always after Vanessa's parents had picked the menu and the seating chart. I had thought I was imagining it. This slow fade into the background. But now I knew it was deliberate, and worse, it had been convenient. The next morning, I called Ellen. She was my best friend from college, the kind of friend who doesn't knock, just shows up. And true to form, she was at my door 3 minutes after I hung up. She didn't ask questions. Just looked at me, really looked, and said softly, "Tell me." I handed her the phone with the message still on the screen. Her eyes didn't widen. Her face didn't twitch. She simply let out a slow breath and whispered, "Well." They finally said it out loud. "What?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "That you're not part of the plan anymore." I blinked at her, stunned by the bluntness. But there was no venom in her voice, just truth. "You gave them everything, Clara," she continued. "You paid for their house, you helped raise their kids, you canceled your own dental surgery to babysit their dog, and they thanked you with exile." I wanted to argue. To say Vanessa was just stressed, that Ryan wasn't like this, that maybe he didn't know what she texted. But I couldn't. Because I did know. I had known for a while. Every time I asked to join a family dinner and was told they were just doing something low-key. Every time I offered to help, and Vanessa said, "No need, we're simplifying things." Every time I swallowed my pride just to feel needed again. Ellen's voice cut through my thoughts. "They don't see you as a person, Clara. They see you as a purse." I stood up and walked to the cabinet, pulled out the old binder labeled, "House Docs." My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. Title transfer signed, power of attorney notarized, bank account access delegated for household convenience. All written with love, with trust. Now they were weapons. "I don't even know what's still mine," I murmured, You find out, Ellen said. And if anything's been tampered with, Clara, you fight. I looked at her. Do you really think I can? I asked. Ellen leaned across the table, gripped my hand, and said the first words that lit the fuse. You've spent your whole life protecting everyone else. It's time to protect yourself. That night I didn't sleep. At 1:42 a.m., I pulled out my laptop, typed in the login to my bank. At first, it all looked normal. The numbers were roughly what I remembered, but I looked deeper. Deeper than I ever had before. There were dozens of small transfers, not massive ones, just quiet withdrawals. 300 for property maintenance, 540 for furniture staging, 200 for renovation consultation. Each transaction had a secondary user ID. V. Merritt, Vanessa. She had linked her own card to my accounts. Quietly, without asking, and I'd let her. The screen blurred as I stared at it. This wasn't just about a cruise anymore. This wasn't about hurt feelings or exclusion. This was theft. And I had signed the permission slip. I closed the laptop, sat in the dark kitchen, looked at the family photo that still hung on the wall. Ryan was smiling, Vanessa holding their daughter, me in the background, literally. My hand was on the stroller. Everyone else was looking at the camera. I had framed that photo. Now it looked like evidence. I whispered into the quiet, You gambled with my kindness, Vanessa. And then I picked up the phone. The next morning I was in Mr. Tarrant's office by 90:15. He had been our family's estate attorney for nearly 2 decades. He'd helped us buy the house, helped us write the first will, and now he would help me undo the worst mistake of my life. I want to reverse the house transfer, I said flatly. He raised an eyebrow. Clara, are you sure? This could get messy. I looked him in the eye. It's already messy. I just finally opened my eyes. We spent hours going through documents. He pulled up my original power of attorney, a sweeping legal document I had signed at Vanessa's insistence after her second baby. It's just in case of emergency, she'd said. But there were clauses, so many hidden clauses. Vanessa had legal access to my financial accounts, decision-making authority if I became incapacitated, even the ability to sign certain forms on my behalf. On the event of limited communication. All of it buried in elegant legal phrasing. All of it signed by me, because I trusted her. This needs to be revoked immediately, Mr. Tarrant said. I nodded. Start everything. Today, he paused for a moment, then asked gently, Clara, are you ready for what this might mean? The fallout. And I said the most honest thing I'd said in years. I'm not afraid of losing them anymore. Because they already let me go. The smell of coffee hit me before the reality of what I was doing sank in. I was sitting at the far corner of the cafe across from a man named Vincent Ward. He didn't look like the private investigators in movies. No trench coat, no cigar, no air of melodrama, just a calm, neutral face, a legal pad, and a laptop already open. I understand you're looking into a financial concern, he said after we exchanged a quiet handshake. That's putting it mildly, I replied, and then I handed him a folder. Inside were printed statements, transaction logs, screenshots of online banking dashboards, all the pieces I had gathered in the last 36 hours. Vincent scanned them silently, nodding only once. Vanessa linked her cards to your accounts without a formal amendment, he said. That's enough to warrant suspicion. If there's more, I'll find it. I didn't realize I had been holding my breath until I finally exhaled. I don't want revenge, I said quietly. I want clarity. He looked at me thoughtfully. People always say that in the beginning. That night I walked through the house again, room by room. This wasn't just drywall and furniture. Every corner held a memory, good and bad. The door frame in the hallway still had Ryan's pencil marks from when we measured his height every year. Vanessa's flower vases were still on the windowsill. The blanket on the couch was one I had knitted during their second pregnancy. And yet, the house no longer felt like mine. Not in spirit. It had become a gallery of sacrifices I made for people who saw me only as scaffolding. At 200 a.m., Vincent texted me. Found something. You'll want to see it in person." By noon the next day, I was back at his office, staring at his screen. "Your daughter-in-law," he said, tapping the cursor, "has been using the house as leverage." "What do you mean?" "She applied for a second mortgage, submitted paperwork just days ago, claimed full ownership. Didn't mention the reversal request you filed, or the original funding source." I felt the blood drain from my face. "She's gambling," he added, "and she thinks you're still asleep at the wheel." That was the moment I realized it wasn't just theft. It wasn't even about money anymore. It was about control. She didn't want to wait for me to pass. She was actively reshaping the narrative, making herself the legal authority, the financial owner, the woman who took care of her aging mother-in-law. But I wasn't aging out, I was waking up. 3 hours later, I was back in Mr. Tarrant's office. I handed him everything Vincent had found. He didn't even flinch. "Let's freeze the accounts," he said immediately. "Issue a cease and desist to the lender, notify the title office of your legal action, and prepare asset protection." "Do it," I replied. No more hesitation. No more hoping they'd come around. No more making excuses. If they had started building a house of cards behind my back, then I would be the one to take it down. Sometimes, the people we trust most build entire lives on top of our silence. But silence isn't peace, it's just deferred collapse. The moment I stopped defending their actions and started defending my own future, I realized the power I had given away. And now, piece by piece, I was taking it back. I heard it slide under my door before I saw it. A soft scratch on the hardwood, barely audible. I was sitting by the window, sipping lukewarm tea, staring at nothing. I wouldn't have noticed if not for the distinct sound of thick paper meeting wood. I stood and walked slowly toward the entryway. There it was. A plain white envelope, the kind Vanessa always used when sending over simple updates. A yellow sticky note was attached. "Just sign when you're ready, Clara. It'll make things easier while we're away." I didn't open it right away. I simply stared, as if the paper itself might bite. Eventually, I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where I had once taught Ryan to write his name. I opened the envelope with steady fingers and slid out a stack of crisp documents. The pages were organized, stapled, and printed in clean legal formatting. I recognized the firm's header, Vanessa's. The first page was labeled, "Revised Durable Power of Attorney, Full Transfer of Legal Authority." My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I just kept reading. Each line confirmed what I already feared. This wasn't about helping me manage things. This was about owning me. Vanessa wanted full, permanent, irrevocable power of attorney. Financial, medical, property-related, and estate-related. All signed while they were cruising down the Mediterranean. They weren't waiting for me to die. They were trying to disappear me, legally. And with that signature, they would have been able to sell my home and drain my savings, move me into a care facility, decide which doctor I saw, and rewrite my will entirely, all under the banner of family care. I slipped the documents back into the envelope. Neat, unmarked, unsigned. Then I pulled out my phone and took photos of every page. By 3:00 p.m., I was at Mr. Tarrant's office again. He didn't even greet me this time. He just waved me into his conference room, like we were on the same page before the words left my mouth. "Let me guess," he said, unfolding the envelope. "They've escalated." I nodded. He flipped through the documents, eyebrows tightening with every page. "This isn't guardianship," he muttered. "This is a financial ambush dressed in legal etiquette." I looked him dead in the eye. "Shut everything down. Freeze every account. Block every clause. And let's prepare to strike back." He nodded once. "We'll accelerate everything. Vincent's evidence makes this airtight now. And if they try to sue, we'll bury them in their own paper trail." Later that evening, I stood in my kitchen again, holding the envelope. I placed it back where I found it, by the front door. Let them think I hadn't noticed. Let them believe I was still the same woman who signed without reading. But that woman had vanished the moment I typed, "Okay." Some betrayals come wrapped in polite paper and familiar handwriting. But just because someone says, "This will make things easier," doesn't mean they're doing it for you. It means they've planned to benefit from your silence. And when you finally choose not to sign, when you say no, you're not being difficult. You're reclaiming your life. The house was quiet. Too quiet, if I were the woman I used to be. But this time, the silence felt earned. Intentional, like the kind of stillness before a clean, precise strike. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat by the window, watching street lamps pour dull yellow light across the sidewalk. The envelope Vanessa had slid under my door was still where I left it, untouched. They thought they could make moves while sailing across foreign waters. They thought I'd be too old, too tired, too grateful to push back. They had no idea I'd been building my own storm. The next morning, I arrived at Terrence's office before he did. He unlocked the door at 7:55 a.m. and said only 3 words when he saw me: "You're ready." I was. The reversal paperwork had been expedited. The asset freezes were live. The updated legal protections were drafted, reviewed, and scheduled for filing. The moment I signed, the house would legally revert to me, with Vanessa's name removed from all ownership rights. Her access to my accounts would be severed, retroactively and irrevocably. I stared at the notary pen for a long moment before picking it up. This wasn't about revenge, it was reclamation. I signed every page with clean, deliberate strokes. When I reached the last line, Terrence spoke with quiet certainty. "It's done. The house is yours again. Vanessa no longer has access to your finances. Not $1 moves without your signature." I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just felt light, not because the battle was over, but because, for the first time, I was no longer playing defense. At noon, Vincent called. "I didn't want to text this," he said. "You need to hear it out loud." "Tell me," I said. "Vanessa submitted pre-approval paperwork to a private lender last week. She used your house, before the reversal finalized, as collateral for a second mortgage." My stomach twisted. She presented it as a clean transfer from a family gift. No mention of financial abuse, no reference to your original funding. The lender thought she was a doting daughter, in law managing your transition into a later phase of care. He paused. "And Clara, she was close. Really close. A day or 2 more, and that debt would have been legally tied to your property." I clenched the edge of the kitchen counter until my knuckles ached. "And now?" I asked. Vincent's voice was clear. "She doesn't own the house. The lender's offer won't go through. And by the time she finds out, you'll already be 10 steps ahead." That was when the idea came. I turned to the empty shelf in my living room, the one where their smiling housewarming photo used to sit. I had pulled it down weeks ago. The shelf had stayed bare, and I realized I didn't want it back. I didn't want any of it back. I didn't want the reminders of what I gave. I wanted a clean start, and I knew exactly how to get it. That afternoon, I made one final call, to a real estate agent, reputable, quiet, discreet. I told her I wanted a fast sale, cash preferred, no delays. The home was pristine, owned outright, in a good neighborhood. She asked why I was selling. I told her, "Because I've decided I'm done being the foundation for someone else's lies." She didn't ask any more questions. By the end of the day, the listing was live, privately. Only qualified buyers. No open houses. No drama. By the time Ryan and Vanessa came back from their vacation, the house would already be gone. You don't have to raise your voice to make yourself heard. Sometimes, the most powerful move is the quiet one, the one they don't see coming until it's too late. I had spent years thinking I had to stay, to hold everything together. But peace doesn't come from sacrifice. It comes from knowing you don't owe anyone the right to break you. Their plane landed at 22 a.m. By 10:47, I was already parked a block away, sitting silently in my car, watching the house that used to hold all my sacrifices. A moving truck was in the driveway. A young couple stood near the door, chatting with the realtor I had hired. The Sold D sign was already gone. Inside, I imagined them walking through each room, marveling at the built-in shelving. The kitchen backsplash Vanessa once claimed was too outdated. They were starting their lives fresh, just like I had. I saw the black SUV before it turned the corner. Vanessa stepped out first, 10 sunglasses perched atop her head, voice sharp and pointed as she instructed Ryan to grab their bags. He moved slower, thumbing through his phone. Detached, then they saw the cars. The couple, the realtor, the moving truck, and their faces changed. Vanessa's mouth opened first, probably to speak, but she froze. Ryan's expression flickered from confusion to alarm. His steps quickened, and then he saw me. I stepped out from my car and walked toward them, calm, unrushed, each step slicing through the disbelief on their faces like a silent blade. "Mom." Ryan's voice cracked. What is this? Who are these people?" Vanessa stepped forward, her tone already shifting into that familiar blend of legalese and manipulation. "This is some mistake," she snapped. "We're in the middle of refinancing. This sale, this is invalid. You can't just—" I cut her off with a single sentence. "It's not your house anymore." Ryan looked like he'd been punched. "Wait, what do you mean it's not ours?" We have a contract. We have equity. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder. Inside the reversal documents, the asset freeze notifications, and the full investigative report that traced every unauthorized transaction, every forged signature, every quiet betrayal. Vanessa grabbed the folder and flipped through it, her face paling with every page. This isn't admissible," she hissed. "This is harassment. You're just upset. This won't hold in court." I met her eyes. Voice steady. "No, Vanessa. This is called proof, and you handed me most of it." Ryan's voice cracked. "Why would you do this, Mom?" I turned to him, my voice colder now. "You made me a convenience, Ryan. You let her turn me into a transaction. And I let you, until I didn't." He blinked, the words barely registering. This wasn't the son who once asked me to read him bedtime stories. That boy was long gone. Vanessa shoved the folder back toward me, her words sharp, desperate. "You've ruined everything. This was our life. You've left us with nothing." I smiled, faint but real. "No, Vanessa. I've simply taken back what was mine." The new couple came out of the house, waved politely, and walked to their car. They had no idea what scene they had interrupted. They didn't need to. This was my ending, not theirs. Ryan stared at the door as it closed behind them. That sound, that soft click of the door shutting, was the sound of finality. When people build their dreams on top of your silence, reclaiming your voice becomes an act of liberation. They never expected I'd say no, because I'd never said it before. But there comes a time when protecting your peace matters more than preserving an illusion. They didn't lose everything. They simply lost access to what was never truly theirs. Vanessa was breathing hard now. She clutched the folder with both hands, knuckles white, flipping back and forth between the documents, hoping to find a loophole, a misstep, anything. "There's no way this is legal," she muttered. "We had access, we had rights. You can't just take everything away like that." "I didn't take it," I said, my voice level. "You handed it away. Every time you forged a transfer. Every time you moved my money behind my back. Every time you smiled while you stole." She opened her mouth again, but I didn't let her speak. "I could press charges. You know, financial elder abuse, coercion, fraud." Her face twisted. "You wouldn't." I raised an eyebrow. "Try me." Orion hadn't said a word in minutes. He stood beside her, limp, like a man slowly realizing the woman next to him wasn't shielding him from the storm. She was the storm. He finally spoke, voice shaking. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know she did all that." I looked at him, long and hard. "You knew enough. You just didn't ask questions." His lip trembled. "But we're family." I nodded. "We were. Until you made me your target." Vanessa suddenly straightened, her voice rising with one final, desperate push. "You think you've won. You'll end up alone. You'll regret this when no one comes for Christmas. You destroyed this family. I didn't flinch. I pulled out a second folder, thinner, tighter, but heavier somehow. If you try to fight me in court, I said calmly, this becomes public record. Inside were screenshots of account withdrawals, the notarized POA document Vanessa had disguised under simplified authority, a transfer logs tied to her personal credit accounts and emails. Yes, emails, where she coached Ryan on, not overwhelming me with details. Vanessa's face drained of color. She snatched the folder, scanned it, and stepped back, silent now. Ryan looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time, and maybe he was. I turned toward them one last time. This isn't revenge. This is me learning the difference between being needed and being loved. Vanessa's arms dropped to her sides. Ryan didn't even lift his eyes. They didn't follow me when I walked away. That afternoon I moved into my new place, a modest apartment. Nothing grand, no open concept kitchen, no marble counters, no heirloom curtains, just clean space, clear windows, and quiet. Real quiet this time, no tension, no manipulation, no sacrifice painted as love. I stood by the window, unpacked a single photo, me and my husband, Richard, in the garden on our 30th anniversary. That's the only frame I put on the shelf. And this time, I didn't place myself in the background. Love without respect isn't love, it's leverage. And when people treat your kindness as a currency, the most powerful thing you can do is stop spending it on them. I didn't get justice in a courtroom. I got it in silence, in paperwork, in walking away. And in the end, I didn't lose a son. I lost 2 people who thought they owned me. The first few weeks in my new apartment passed like ripples across still water. I didn't do anything dramatic. I didn't travel, adopt a dog, or change my hair. I simply learned how to exist without tension. I bought fresh fruit at the farmer's market. I joined a book club at the library. I walked slowly. I ate when I was hungry, not when someone needed me. For the first time in years, no one texted asking for money. No one asked me to babysit. No one called me only to remind me of bills I had paid long ago. And it was peaceful. Dorsey lived across the hall, an ex-librarian with a sharp tongue and an ever sharper sense of smell. I know you're a tea person, she declared one afternoon after catching the scent of chamomile under my door. That makes you safe. I didn't ask what coffee drinkers were. We talked often, on our doorsteps, in the hallway, sometimes at the little bench outside the building. She reminded me of the kind of woman I used to be, quick to laugh, quicker to bite when wronged. One Thursday morning, as I returned from the post office, I found a letter slipped under my door. Nothing unusual, until I saw the bank's return address, and my name. But not my new address, my old one. That shouldn't have been possible. I opened it slowly. Inside was a pre-approval summary for a retirement account, secured line of credit. It was addressed to me, but I had never applied for it. I read the details 3 times. Loan amount of $45,000, purpose, medical planning plus transition support. Secondary authorized contact. Vanessa Merritt. My throat tightened. This wasn't a leftover record. This was recent. It was dated last week. I drove to the branch listed on the letter, downtown. Not the one I normally used. A young teller met me with a cautious smile. Yes, Mrs. Merritt. It shows you applied for a retirement, tied line of credit with a secondary authorization on file. I clenched my jaw. I didn't apply for anything. The teller frowned and called the manager. A thin man in a blue striped tie came over, typing into his tablet. Well, it seems the application was made under a durable power of attorney submitted 6 months ago. Digitally filed from another branch. Which branch? He hesitated. Tacoma. I drove home with my hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. Vanessa had kept a copy of the original POA, the same one I had reversed with Mr. Tarrant. She had submitted it to a different bank branch, one that hadn't been notified yet of the legal nullification. And now she was trying again. A new loan, a new lie, same target. Me. I called Mr. Tarrant immediately. He answered on the second ring. She's still moving? I said. Even after everything. Within an hour. We were on a 3-way call with Vincent, the investigator. They worked fast. By midnight, they uncovered more than I ever expected. Vanessa hadn't just submitted old paperwork. She had leveraged it, intentionally, at a branch where her old college roommate worked in operations. She had also begun paperwork for something worse, a medical trust, a document drafted under her name, listing me as a beneficiary in need of planning support for future cognitive decline. It wasn't just about money anymore. She was preparing to present me, legally, as incompetent. If I hadn't caught the pre-approval letter, it would have been too late. Terrence's voice shook when he spoke. She's trying to lay the foundation for guardianship. Once that's in place, she can contest any prior reversals. She's building a back door. I was silent for a long time. Then I said it. I want to shut her down. Entirely. Not just for me. Vincent paused. There's something you should see. He sent a file. It wasn't about me. It was about a man named Harlan Bishop, 78 years old, widower, no children, and Vanessa's name, listed on his POA. She had been his part-time caregiver for a brief period last year. He died 3 months later. His house had been sold. The money went into a trust. The beneficiary, Vanessa Merritt. I stared at the file, bile rising in my throat. This wasn't care. This was a pattern, and I wasn't the first. But if I had anything to say about it, I'd be the last. I met with Vincent and Terrence in person the next morning. We laid out a plan, quiet but thorough. Terrence would file a formal fraud claim with the national banking system, flagging Vanessa's activity with an internal legal alert. It wouldn't make headlines yet, but it would lock her out of any future financial transactions across multiple institutions. Vincent would reach out, quietly, to Mr. Bishop's family lawyer. There might be more we didn't see. I would do one final thing: send Vanessa a letter. The kind that ends things permanently. I wrote it by hand. Vanessa, I saw what you tried to do again. This time with a letter I wasn't supposed to receive. You're not just careless. You're consistent. You think paperwork is power, but you forgot something important. People leave trails, and you've left one all over the lives of people who trusted you. You called me mom, but you treated me like a strategy. I won't play that game anymore. I've alerted the financial system. I've involved lawyers far beyond your circle, and I've opened a case that doesn't stop with me. You built a career on quiet control. I'll end it the same way. Do not contact me again. Clara Merritt. I mailed it the next day. Certified. And then I sat on my balcony in the late morning sun, sipping tea while the first emails from Vincent began rolling in. Responses from banking systems, confirmations from the fraud division, and a quiet note from a lawyer in Oregon who had also started questioning Vanessa's activity with another elderly client. This was no longer about just protecting myself. This was justice. Some predators don't wear masks. They wear family titles, soft voices, and legal paperwork. I thought saving myself was the end of the story. But sometimes, surviving reveals a deeper truth. You weren't just a victim. You were the first one who dared to fight back. The email came in at 20:12 p.m. I was sorting through receipts. Old habits die hard. When I noticed the sender's name, Elliot Landers. Subject line: I think we need to talk about Vanessa. At first, I thought it was spam or a trap, but curiosity, clean, unshakable, made me click. The message was short. Mrs. Merritt, I believe I'm the only family Vanessa still speaks to, though even that's limited now. I read the recent banking notice forwarded to my legal office. I had no idea how deep this went, but I think you deserve some context. Would you be willing to meet? No threats, no excuses, just the truth. Elliot Landers, her brother. I sat frozen for a long time. Vanessa had a brother. I'd never heard of him. Not once in all the years she'd been part of our family. Not at birthdays. Not at the wedding. Not in any stories. It was like he didn't exist. And now, out of nowhere, he was offering me context. I forwarded the email to Vincent and Terrence immediately. Vincent called back within 5 minutes. I ran him he said. He's clean. Corporate attorney. Works for an ethics board in Colorado. Moved out of state 10 years ago. Minimal contact with Vanessa since then. Tarrant chimed in. If he's coming forward, it might mean she's more isolated than we thought. I took a deep breath, set it up. We met at a neutral cafe, midway between my building and his hotel. Elliot was tall, slender, with a nervous energy that reminded me of someone who had spent his life watching for landmines before taking any steps. He didn't waste time. I'm not here to defend her, he said. I stopped doing that a long time ago. I nodded. He slid a folder across the table. In that file is every family trust record from our grandfather. Vanessa was his legal caretaker for 8 months before he died. I opened the folder. The numbers hit first. Hundreds of thousands, shifted, divided, reallocated. And Elliot's name. Removed from beneficiary lists. She isolated him, he continued. Claimed I was unstable. That I'd abandoned the family. In truth, I had moved away because of her. I couldn't keep cleaning up after her manipulation. My stomach turned. She's smart, Elliot added. That's the worst part. She doesn't yell. She doesn't lie blatantly. She just adjusts the truth until she owns it. I met his eyes. I know the type. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I didn't come to warn you. Clearly you don't need warning. You already did what I couldn't. You stopped her. Then why are you here? I asked. He hesitated. Because someone at her law firm tipped me off. She's under review. Internal ethics audit. If that goes public, she'll burn. He paused. And I needed to know, before that happens, if there's anything you want made public. For a moment, I said nothing. The truth is, I had dreamed about it, about watching her lose her license, about the press release, the scandal, the free fall. But now, sitting in front of her brother, seeing the ripple effect of her damage, I felt something else. Power, not vengeance. Control. I didn't have to expose her. I already beat her. But what if there were others? People like me, or like Elliot, or worse, people too scared to come forward. I want the audit to happen, I said. But I don't want a circus. I want quiet, institutional accountability. A record that can't be erased. Elliot nodded slowly. That I can help with. We shook hands. And just like that, Vanessa's last defense crumbled. Not with fire, but with facts. That night I didn't sleep. Not because I was anxious, because I was awake. For the first time in years, I saw exactly how deep the rot had gone, not just in my family, but in her past, and maybe others too. And now, I was the one holding the light. There's a kind of power that doesn't need noise. It lives in what you know, and what you choose to do with it. I used to think surviving was the goal. But sometimes, surviving means becoming someone strong enough to protect more than just yourself. And in that quiet strength, I finally became dangerous. It started with a knock. Not a sharp, angry knock. Just a gentle rapping against my apartment door, like someone wasn't sure if they had the right unit. I had just poured tea. A soft rain tapped against the window. My day had been quiet, until that moment. I opened the door. She was younger than I expected, mid-30s maybe. Brown coat, soaked at the sleeves. Nervous eyes. Flicking down the hall, then back at me. Mrs. Merritt. I nodded, cautious. She pulled something from her purse. A business card. On it, Elliot Landers. He said you might talk to me. We sat in my living room, steam curling from 2 cups of tea. Her name was Talia Brennan. She had been a paralegal intern at Vanessa's firm. 5 years ago. I didn't know what I was stepping into. She said, fingers tight around the ceramic cup. She took me under her wing, told me I had potential. Her voice faltered. She said her previous mentor had held her back and that she wanted to be different. Wanted to empower women. I listened. She introduced me to one of her clients, an elderly man named Mr. Ortega. He had early-stage memory loss, no family. She said he needed someone young to help organize his paperwork. Her hands trembled. She used my credentials. She had me notarize forms I didn't understand. Forms that changed the title of his property. I felt my body go cold. She told me it was standard. She said I was helping him. She said it would make me indispensable at the firm. Talia's voice cracked. But after he died, the property was gone. Sold, quick and quiet. She paused. I only found out last month that the trust had been funneled into an offshore account. I didn't even know she used my notary number. I swallowed hard. She forged a future through other people's lives. I murmured. And we all let her. Talia looked up at me, tears brimming. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't come to confess. I came to ask how you got out, how you stopped her. I reached forward and took her hand. I stopped trusting the story she told about herself, and the story she told about me. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a pen in hand, staring at a new kind of form. It wasn't for banks, not for lawyers, not for revenge. It was a voluntary witness affidavit, one that would support the ethics investigation quietly unfolding inside Vanessa's firm. Tarrant had sent it earlier that week, but I hadn't signed it yet. Elliot had warned me, if you do this, there's no undoing it. You'll be a formal party in the case. You'll be on record. I thought I'd feel fear, but I didn't. I felt ready. I signed. The next morning, Tarrant called. She's been suspended, he said, pending a full review. They're not releasing the details yet, but your statement, and Talia's, were both accepted as corroborating evidence. He paused. She won't practice again. Not here. Not anywhere. I stood by my window. The city moved quietly outside. And for the first time, I saw my role clearly. Not as a victim. Not even just as a survivor. I had become a barrier. A wall that stopped her from going further. And sometimes that's more powerful than justice. It's prevention. You don't need a courtroom to reclaim your voice. Sometimes the quietest testimonies have the loudest consequences. I once thought silence made me safe, but silence also gave her room to grow. And now speaking, not shouting, was how I made sure she wouldn't grow again. The invitation came by registered mail. No threat, no warning, just a quiet envelope with the seal of the Office of Legal and Professional Conduct, State of Washington. Inside, a letter. You are formally invited to provide closed-door testimony for the professional review of Vanessa Merritt. Your presence is voluntary, but may assist the board in assessing the scope of misconduct. This proceeding will remain confidential unless escalated to criminal court. It was signed by an ethics officer. I stared at it for a long time, not because I was unsure, but because I never thought my name would matter in a room like that. Tarrant drove me to the hearing. It wasn't in a courtroom, not even in a courtroom building. Just a beige, windowless office near the Capitol. Quiet and dull, almost forgettable, which somehow made it more powerful. Inside, 5 board members, 1 moderator, 2 legal observers, and 1 seat at the end of the table, waiting for me. I sat down. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Merritt, the moderator said. You're not here as an accuser. You're here as a truth teller. Speak freely. And I did. I spoke for 47 minutes. I told them everything, from the gift of the house, to the crew's exclusion, to the power of attorney buried beneath polite smiles. I told them about the money, about the forged trust, about the almost second mortgage, about the woman who tried to erase me while I was still breathing. And when I was done, the room was silent, not shocked, just still, like they had heard this before, like I wasn't the first. As I stood to leave, a soft voice called after me, Mrs. Merritt. Someone requested to speak with you privately. I frowned. Who? The moderator looked hesitant. Vanessa's aunt. Her name is Martha Landers. I froze. Landers. Elliot's side of the family. Martha met me in a side office. She was in her 70s. Small frame, white hair in a tight bun. She wore a shawl that looked handmade, and her hands trembled not with age, but with something deeper. She didn't sit. I won't take your time, she said. I just needed to say something, and I didn't want Vanessa to. I waited. Martha took a long breath. Vanessa was raised by my brother. He married her mother when Vanessa was 6. Her biological father was cruel, Not just unkind, controlling, punitive. He forged Vanessa's signature on bank accounts when she was 10. Put debt in her name by 12. Trained her to distrust everyone by 15. I said nothing. I couldn't. She learned young that money equals safety. That paperwork wins. That charm is the only armor some girls are ever handed. Her voice cracked. I'm not excusing what she did, I'm not. But I needed someone to know where it came from. And maybe why she's always had to control every room she walks into. The room blurred around me. Not from sympathy, not from forgiveness, but from something harder to hold. Understanding. Vanessa wasn't just a predator, she was also a product, and yet she had made a choice. I nodded slowly. Thank you, I said. Martha looked relieved. I know it doesn't change what she did. I just needed someone else to know she wasn't born this way. I left the building in silence. That night, I didn't sleep. Not from rage, not from regret, but from the weight of truth. People aren't always just good or bad. Sometimes they're made, twisted, taught, trapped, but choice still matters. And Vanessa had chosen power over people, survival over ethics, control over love, and I had chosen to say no. Even the people who hurt us were shaped by pain. But understanding where they come from doesn't mean we must follow them there. Empathy doesn't undo damage. It only gives us space to stop the cycle. And sometimes, that's the hardest form of justice there is. It had been 103 days since I'd last seen my son. Not that I was counting, not at first. But after the confrontation in front of the sold house, after the folders were handed over, after the truth broke like a storm across his face, he had vanished. No calls, no letters, not even a message disguised as apology. And for that, I was strangely grateful. Until the knock came. I didn't look through the peephole. Something in the air told me who it was. When I opened the door, Ryan stood there, no longer tanned from luxury cruises, no longer confident, no longer armored in his wife's rehearsed explanations. He held nothing except a thin manila envelope. And something about that unsettled me more than if he'd come screaming. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. I didn't answer. I stepped aside. He entered like a man unsure of his place, because, for the first time, he was. I gestured to the kitchen table. We sat, silence stretched. He didn't fill it with excuses. Instead, he opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph, a real one, not printed, not copied. The kind you can't replicate. It was us. Him at age 6, missing a front tooth. Me behind him, both arms wrapped tight around his chest. And the Christmas tree glowing behind us. I remembered that night. He had been scared of the dark after a storm. I let him sleep in my bed for 3 nights straight. "I found this in my storage unit," he said. I didn't even know I kept it. I didn't speak. He stared at it for a moment, then slid it across the table. I didn't come to ask for forgiveness. Still, I said nothing. I came because I don't know how I got from that photo to the man who stood silent while you were erased. He swallowed. I didn't stop her. That's the part I can't live with. His voice didn't crack. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't a plea. It was just tired. I looked at him fully for the first time. He had my father's eyes. He had his own shame now, too. "Do you still love her?" I asked. He blinked. "Vanessa." I nodded. He didn't answer right away. "I don't know what I love anymore," he said finally. "But I know what I ruined." I picked up the photo, not with sentiment, but with sobriety. "You weren't erased," I said. "You faded, because you let someone else color over what we had." He nodded, eyes glassy. I handed the photo back. "I don't want this," I said. "If you do, keep it, not for guilt, but for memory." He hesitated, then tucked it carefully back into the envelope. When he stood to leave, he paused at the door. "Would you ever let me see you again?" I didn't answer right away. Then I looked up, steady. "Not until you know who you are without her." He nodded once, and walked away. That evening, I sat by the window as the rain returned. I didn't cry. I didn't ache. I simply breathed, aware that closure doesn't always come with hugs or tears or reunion. Sometimes, It comes with a photo that's returned to the person who forgot what it meant. Forgiveness isn't a door we leave unlocked. It's a threshold we guard until the person on the other side remembers how to knock. I didn't reject my son today. I returned him to himself. And maybe, just maybe, that's the kind of love that survives even the silence. It came on a Tuesday morning, an email, subject line, Washington State Senior Protection Conference keynote request. I blinked twice before clicking. Dear Mrs. Merritt, we are honored to invite you as a keynote speaker for our upcoming event focused on elder financial protection and ethical reform. Your story, resilience, and quiet action have reached our advisory committee through internal recommendations. We believe your voice can inspire and protect others. This event will be closed to media, but open to hundreds of professionals across law, health, and community services. Travel and lodging included. Please let us know if you're willing to share your experience, not just as a survivor, but as a catalyst for change. I rate it 3 times. Then I closed the laptop. I spent the day in stillness. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just folded laundry, took a walk, stared at the trees shifting in the wind, and tried to imagine what I would even say to a room full of strangers. I wasn't a lawyer. I wasn't a politician. I wasn't even sure I was brave. All I knew was how it felt to be invisible, to be erased politely, to be praised one day and ignored the next. And yet they were asking, because someone had told them. Someone had noticed. I called Tarrant that evening. They want me to speak, I said. He chuckled. I'm not surprised. Your case changed more than you realize. 3 banks rewrote internal access policies after we filed. That startled me. I had been so focused on surviving that I hadn't paused to ask if it meant something. Tarrant continued, more serious now. You don't have to do it, Clara. You don't owe anyone your story. But maybe someone else out there is where you were a year ago, still silent, still thinking it's normal to disappear. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk with a pen and a blank notepad, and I started writing. I used to think being quiet made me safe, that if I didn't cause trouble, I'd stay loved. I gave and gave, until I realized that kindness without boundaries is a slow erasure. The words came slowly, unevenly, but they came. On the day of the conference, I wore a soft gray dress. Nothing flashy, just clean and quiet. They seated me near the stage. The moderator introduced me like I was someone important. And now, we welcome a woman whose private courage became a quiet revolution. I walked onto the stage. The lights weren't harsh. The room wasn't huge. But the silence was thick, with waiting. I took the microphone. My hands didn't shake. I'm not here to give legal advice, I began. I'm here because once upon a time, I thought being family meant being safe. And then I told them everything. Not the legal language, not the court timeline, but the human part. What it felt like to be slowly edited out of your own life. And what it means to take your name back, without raising your voice. When I finished, they didn't clap right away. They stood, quietly, and then they did. Not loud, not theatrical, just present, the way I had always wanted to be seen. Afterward, a young social worker approached me. I didn't know how to help a client last year, she said. Her daughter was draining her retirement, but she kept saying, it's family. She paused. Now I know what to say next time. I walked out into the dusk air lighter, not victorious, not famous, but useful. And sometimes, that's the best kind of healing. Your voice doesn't need to echo through the world to matter. Sometimes it just needs to reach one person, at the right time. I never planned to become anything more than a woman reclaiming her peace. But peace, once found, becomes something others can follow. And maybe that's how we changed the story for good. The envelope was cream-colored, no return address. The handwriting was small and slanted, careful, practiced, but older. I knew before opening it that this wasn't from Ryan. And it wasn't from Vanessa. Inside 2 pages folded once. The paper smelled faintly of lavender. Dear Mrs. Merritt, you don't know me, but I know of you. My name is Eleanor Brennan. I'm Talia's mother. She told me about your story. Not all of it. Just enough that I recognized something I hadn't seen in my daughter in a long time. Clarity. Purpose. And breath. You saved her. Maybe not directly, but completely. I stopped reading. My chest tightened. Talia. The young woman who had come to my apartment. The one who had been manipulated into notarizing stolen trust documents for Vanessa. She had been so composed, so soft-spoken. But now, between the lines of her mother's handwriting, I saw the cracks. Last year, after leaving the law firm, Talia stopped answering calls. She left her apartment. She moved back home and barely spoke. I watched her fade. I couldn't reach her. Not as her mother, not as anyone. She wouldn't talk about what happened. Not until one night, after midnight, she came into my room with a blanket and simply said, "I think I helped someone steal a life." I held her. I told her we would find a way back, but nothing I said reached her. She barely ate, didn't sleep, until a few weeks ago. She knocked on my door with her laptop in hand. On the screen was a video, your conference speech. She watched the whole thing without blinking. Then she whispered, "I'm not alone." I placed the letter down. My eyes burned, not with grief, with awe. "Mrs. Merritt, you will never know how many people you've saved by surviving. Not just the ones who clap in conference rooms, but the ones who almost didn't make it to the next morning. You gave my daughter back to me, and you gave her the words she needed to forgive herself. With everything in my heart, thank you." Eleanor Brennan. I sat still for a long time. There had been a time I believed I was nothing more than a wallet with a heartbeat, a convenience, a fading background character in other people's stories. But here I was now, in someone else's survival story, not because I shouted, not because I fought hard, but because I stood, because I refused to disappear. I lit a candle that night, not for mourning, for gratitude, and I whispered to no one and everyone, "Let this life mean something beyond me." Sometimes, we never know the full weight of our survival until it becomes someone else's lifeline. I used to think my story was small, that it ended at the boundaries of my pain, but healing leaves echoes. And if we're lucky, one of those echoes becomes someone else's beginning. The official notice came folded in thirds. Plain envelope, no ceremony, no apology. Just a final line near the bottom: Vanessa Merritt's license to practice law in the state of Washington has been revoked permanently, effective immediately. That was it. No fanfare, no headlines, no courtroom finale like in the movies. Just a clean, sharp erasure. The kind she once tried to do to me, except this one, was earned. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I didn't breathe easier. Because by the time that paper arrived, I had already moved on. I had already healed in 100 tiny, unremarkable ways. In every morning I woke up without tension. In every evening where I didn't check my accounts twice. In every simple moment that belonged to me, and me alone. 2 days later, another envelope arrived. Handwritten, thicker paper. A name in the top left corner: Ryan Merritt. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. "Dear Mom, I'm not writing to ask for anything. I'm writing because for the first time in my life, I have nothing left to hide behind. Vanessa and we've separated. She's gone. I don't know where. The last time I saw her was in a lawyer's office. She said something that stuck with me. You were always the soft one. That's why I chose you." And maybe she was right. I was soft, but not in the way you were. I was soft for convenience. You were soft with courage. That's something I never understood until now. I'm living in a small apartment in Spokane now. I'm working at a logistics firm. Nothing impressive, but honest. Every weekend, I volunteer at a shelter. They give me the broken things to fix: chairs, radios, lamps. I think it's fitting. I still have the photo, by the way. The one from Christmas. I look at it sometimes and think maybe that version of me isn't gone. Just misplaced. I won't ask to come back. I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know I remember who you were. And I see who you are now. Love, if you still allow it, Ryan. I folded the letter once, pressed it between 2 books, didn't cry, didn't ache, because it didn't hurt. Not anymore. He didn't ask for forgiveness, and I didn't offer it, but he remembered as a bank, not as a burden, as a mother. And somehow, that was enough. I made tea that evening, poured 2 cups, left one on the counter untouched. Not out of longing, out of peace. Sometimes closure doesn't come through confrontation. It comes in quiet truth. I didn't need him to beg. I didn't need her to fall. I needed to be whole again. And now, even without an apology, I am. Because real healing means knowing you no longer need to be heard, to know you were right. It wasn't planned. I was driving past on the way to visit an old friend in the neighborhood. The road curved, and before I realized it, the street came into view. There it was, the house. Once mine. Then theirs, now someone else's. I slowed. My hands didn't sweat. My chest didn't tighten. Just a soft tug, like the breeze asking if I remembered. I parked at the end of the block, and I walked. The house looked brighter. Someone had painted the shutters a warm blue. The front porch had new flower pots. Marigolds, maybe. The tree we once hung fairy lights from had grown taller. Its branches reached farther now, touching air that had never belonged to me. But I didn't feel jealous. I felt relieved. This place, this house of memory, was no longer haunted. It was living again. I didn't go up to the porch. I stayed by the gate, watching, listening, letting the silence speak. Then I heard it. "Are you lost?" The voice was small, curious. I turned. A girl stood near the gate, maybe 9 or 10. She wore mismatched socks and held a drawing crumpled in her left hand. Her hair was half, brushed in the way little girls always seem to carry. Half chaos, half sunshine. I smiled. "No," I said. "Just passing by." She tilted her head. "You used to live here, huh?" It wasn't a question. It was knowing. I nodded. "A long time ago." She stepped forward. "My room's the one upstairs with the star stickers. It used to smell like paint when we moved in. Now it smells like my guinea pig." I chuckled. "Mine used to smell like cinnamon. I kept spice jars on the sill to make it cozy." She looked delighted. "Like real cinnamon. The real stuff," I said. "Not the sugar kind." She looked at me for a while. Then she asked, "Were you happy here?" I paused, then knelt to her level. I tried to be. And some days I was. But not always. She nodded slowly, like that made sense. Then she reached into her pocket and handed me a small, folded paper. "It's a sun," she said. "I made it in art class. You can have it if you want." I took it with both hands, as if it were fragile, sacred. "Thank you," I said. "This is the kindest goodbye I've ever been given." I walked back to my car with the paper sun in my hand. It wasn't grand. It wasn't heavy. It was light, like me now. And when I looked back one last time, the girl waved from the porch steps. I waved back and drove away. Sometimes we revisit the past not to reclaim it, but to release it. I used to think the house held my story. But stories don't live in wood or windows. They live in people. And I left the best parts of me in kindness someone else could grow inside. I hadn't touched the box in years. It sat in the corner of my closet, tucked behind an old quilt and a stack of outdated tax folders. I had nearly forgotten it was there. But something about the visit to the house, something about the girl with mismatched socks and sun-colored eyes, had stirred something I thought long gone. So I pulled it out. The box was small, wooden, carved with a pattern my late husband had once made by hand. He gave it to me on our 20th anniversary. I had used it to keep the things I didn't know what to do with. Inside were birthday cards never sent, a pacifier from Ryan's first year, a ring I stopped wearing after Vanessa mocked it, a handful of letters, all addressed to no one. All written by me. They were pages I wrote in the dark, in silence. On nights when I didn't want to scream, but couldn't bear to speak aloud. I read one, then another. Each one held a truth I had once been too afraid to voice. I feel like a lamp someone only turns on when they need light. I don't know when I stopped being a person in their eyes. If I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone notice anything other than unpaid bills? I didn't cry. I read them like I was holding someone else's story. Because maybe I was. I wasn't that woman anymore. But I honored her. She had survived long enough for me to arrive. That night, I wrote one more letter. I didn't address it to Ryan, or Vanessa, or the girl at the gate, or even Richard, my late husband. This one was for me. Dear Clara, you tried. You tried in silence. You tried in service. You tried through sacrifice and softness and second chances. They didn't see it. But now you do. You weren't erased. You were rewritten. And today, you belong fully to yourself again. Not because they gave you back, but because you stopped waiting for them to. You survived. And now you live. With care, Clara, I folded the letter, placed it on top of the old ones. Then I closed the box, not to hide it, but to let it rest. The next morning, I made tea. I watered the plant I had been neglecting. I opened a new book. I turned on music, not classical, not calming. Something messy and full of life. And I sat in the light of a window I had chosen. No one needed me today. And for once, that didn't mean I was alone. It meant I was free. You can spend your whole life waiting to be seen. But the real freedom comes when you see yourself, fully, without apology. My story didn't end in a courtroom. It ended in a quiet room where I chose peace over permission. And that was the loudest thing I ever did. Have you ever been quietly erased from your own family? Have you ever given everything, only to realize they loved what you gave, not who you are? Clara's story is not just hers. It belongs to every silent mother, every forgotten elder, every person who dared to say, "Enough." If you've been through something like this, or know someone who has, share your truth in the comments. Subscribe to Telling Story with me for more stories that speak the unspeakable. Because sometimes, surviving with dignity is the loudest thing we can do.